Hi everybody. I did a bit of a bookshelf roulette this Sunday morning and my hand grabbed hold of this classic book here called The Street Corner Society by William Foote Whyte, The Social Structure of an Italian Slum, 4th edition. This is a classic book and study in the area of sociology, but do not let that intimidate you because this is a really good, really easy read. This was done in the 50s, I believe, and this is a 4th edition. And even this 4th edition is about 20 years old. As you can see here, I bought it from Victoria University, a secondhand bookstall here, paid $20 for it, and then it's stamped 1995. At the time, it was the newest edition of a book that I had read a few years before as I was contemplating whether to carry on in macroeconomics, anthropology, sociology, or psychology. In the end, I ended up in psychology. So here, it's by University of Chicago Press. First edition is in 1943, so not the 50s. It's even earlier than that, I beg your pardon. And then 1955, 1981, 1993 is the 4th edition, all by University of Chicago. So let me just read really quickly at the back what it says here. Street Corner Society is one of a handful of works that can justifiably be called classics of sociological research. William Foote Whyte's account on the Italian-American slum he called quote-unquote Cornerville, Boston's North End, has been the model for urban ethnography for 50 years by mapping the intricate social worlds of street gangs and corner boys, quote-unquote. Whyte was among the first to demonstrate that poor community need not be socially disorganized. His writing set a standard for vividly detailed portrayals of real people in real situations, and his frank discussion of his methodology, which is participant observation, very popular in a lot of social scientific research, social science research, including anthropology or cultural anthropology, has served as an essential casebook in field research for generations of students and scholars. This anniversary edition included a new preface and in the methodological appendix a new section on the legacy of Street Corner Society. This new section was written in response to recent critical challenges to the validity, interpretation, and uses of Whyte's data and offers his statements on the changing roles of observer and informant and on ethnography as a social science. Quote-unquote, the Whyte impact on an underdog, Whyte as in his name Whyte, not the color. The moving statement by Angelo Ralph Orlandella, a gang leader who became the author's first research assistant, is preserved. As a community study that changed the way poverty was understood, as a fascinating portrait of city life, and as a leading example of field research and the methods of participant observation, Street Corner Society will endure well into its next 50 years. And then there's a little bit of quote here from Reviews in Anthropology by someone called Robert Washington. Street Corner Society broke new ground and set a standard for field research in American cities that remains a source of intellectual challenge. And then further down it says William Foote Whyte is research director of the programs for employment and workplace systems at Cornell University and a past president of the American Sociological Association, the Society for Applied Anthropology, and the Industrial Relations Research Association. So that's as of 1994, though. And then cover photo, it says here Protest March on Boston City Hall, published in Boston Herald, August 12, 1939. Now, the reason why I could highly recommend you, anybody, don't let the academic language and tone of it fool you in a way. I mean, that's not quite the right expression, but I've always been fascinated by studies, understanding humans around me, largely because I had in the past struggled with a sense of understanding who I was, where I belong, how to categorize or how to understood myself in terms of who I was, where I came from, within the context of larger society. And this identity crisis drove me to try to understand the people around me, starting from wanting to be a sociologist and a cultural anthropologist, understanding communities, understanding individuals and peoples as they are with each other, to trying to understand the person as they are within themselves in psychology, which cannot really be separated from how they are, how people are, how we are, how humans are with each other. And so social psychology became a passion of mine, and it still is. However, due to various realities of life, such as needing to find employment, I didn't, because as a social psychologist, you do need to be an academic, I believe, or you need to apply yourself into marketing or campaigning or something to do most of the times with mass behavior, with behavior of the masses. And that means either a certain kind of corporate job or certain kind of governmental job, which weren't available to me when I was moving around these various countries to live in at the time. So I flipped randomly open to this page, which I bookmarked, and I'm going to read to you really quickly. This is how the book goes, and it's interesting that conversations and stories and words and people expressing themselves, those are data. Those are the things we can seek to understand each other, or we can seek to understand others or ourselves with. I'm going to read this out to you. There is a section here. I'm going to start reading from here. This is literally the page that I opened this morning, and I'm just going to point and read. The social cleavages were accentuated in a less obvious but equally important way through the individuals that the social workers selected as worthy of special attention and help. The story of Lou de Niro is a case in point. As Lou told me, Mr. Bacon broke me, Bill. He really broke me. I idolized the man, and then he let me down. One day I was in church praying for a job. I needed a job in the worst way. Then when I came out, Mr. Bacon stopped me on the street and asked me if I wanted to go to work. He had put me to work in his antique shop with some of the other boys from the settlement. I was making $12 a week, but I was living in the same room with him. Wherever he went, he would have me drive him. He gave me suits of clothes. He would buy 2 tickets to shows, and we would go together. He would give me spending money. He would take me to play tennis and golf and go riding with him. In the evenings, I would sit in his office 2 or 3 hours until he was ready to go to bed. I would sit and read. I would rather do that than be with the boys on the corner. When he wanted to play bridge at night, I would go out and get some fellows for him. I would bring in Ted Costa and Frank Perino and some other fellows, and we would play. When he went someplace in the evening, he would have me drive him there, and then I could take the car and take the boys riding until I called for him. I idolized the man, Bill. I had plenty of chances to get better jobs, but I didn't want to leave Mr. Bacon. I would rather be out with him than with a girl. He was always telling me things to educate me, or he tried to do lots of things for me. He put me through bleep prep, and he started me at college, but I never went for the books, Bill. I guess I wasn't ambitious enough. I was ambitious, but I never wanted to stick to the job. But I never wanted to stick to the job. He tried to do a lot of things for me, but finally, he did me dirt. I was playing around with Josie Coulter, a debutante that worked in our antique shop. I was petting her, but I wasn't doing anything wrong. But some of the fellows must have been jealous, and they told Mr. Bacon. He told me to let her alone. At that time, it was nothing out of the way, but Later, I was seeing her undercover. And then one day, he laid me off. That was the last thing I thought would ever happen to me, Bill. No, I don't think it was on account of the girl. I think he thought I was getting too dependent on him, so he threw me off. I went right home, packed my things, and left his room for good. I've never been back there. Every time he sees me, he asks me how things are going, and I tell him, but that's all. He broke me, Bill. I was with him all those years with the expectation that something was going to come of it. I got to like playing golf and tennis with him. I rode with him every morning in the summer. I got to like being with him. And then he dropped me. In that time, I might have learned a trade or a profession, and I would be much better off today. I know I would be better off. I could have gotten started in something. Now I don't know what to do with myself. And then Whyte, that's the end quote of the excerpt of the story, of the data. And then this is Whyte's analysis. The only attributes that could have recommended Lou to Mr. Bacon's special consideration were his attractive personality and his docility. He idolized the social worker, and for that he was rewarded. If Lou had been intelligent in his schoolwork, or if he had had some skill in business affairs, he might have been able to capitalize upon Mr. Bacon's support to better his social and economic position. Lacking such talents, he had no alternative but to return to the corner boys when the social worker dropped him. Mr. Bacon took Lou away from his corner boy associates and made it extremely difficult for him to readjust himself to them. When they deal with the corner boys, that's it, in effect, what the social workers try to do. Doc told me that the Norton Street social workers had frequently tried to persuade him to stop hanging on the street corner and to break away from his old friends. If he had followed their advice, he would have subordinated himself to the social workers and lost his position in the community. So that's the kind of, that is very, like, you could see just from reading that it's easy to follow, it's easy to read. There's nothing highbrow or academic about it. I could highly, highly recommend this. Go and find the newest edition possible, Street Corner Society by William Foote Whyte. You do not have to be a sociologist or sociology enthusiast or an academic or a student or an intellectual. It reads very, very easily, and it's an eye-opener to how human beings interacting with each other and organizing each other even today. So I'll talk to you later.